Okay, good morning, Year 11. You have to bear with me because I'm absolutely full of a cold and deathly ill. So if I sound a bit husky, that's why. So you're going to need your blue books. Once you've got your blue books, if you could copy the date, the title, and underline your heading. So the date is 18th of October, and today's title is What is the Purpose of the Spirits in the Novella? Because today I'm going to be helping you revise for your Christmas Carol mock. So if the teacher is supervising, if you could just pause the video now while students complete that task. How you do it now is this activity. Can you remember the quotes that go with this image? They are both from the opening description of Scrooge. So can you remember the quote that comes with this image? As an extension task, can you talk about the significance of those quotes? Okay, we'll give you 2 minutes for that activity. You could pause the video now and get that done. Okay, so the first image was hard and sharp as flint. So remember, flint is something that starts fire. And the second quote was solitary as an oyster. Both are really important because they show Scrooge's difficult personality, his unpleasant personality. But also the second one, the solitary as an oyster, kind of is a recurring motif as we go through the novella, and basically indicates that there is something good inside Scrooge. We can only crack open the surface. So if you haven't gotten those quotes down, get those down now. Okay, so we're going to look at some key vocab today, and the first word that we're going to look at is propel. Now I know that you're going to know what that word means, but let's just have a look at it. So the etymology of the word comes from the Latin propellere, which means reveal. So obviously you probably know that from the context of go forward or to drive forward, but actually we're interested in this kind of Latin version of it, of what it reveals. Okay, so that's going to be an important part of today's lesson. So the actual definition is to drive or push something forward. So for example, when exercising, music can propel your body to work harder. But in this case, the thing that I'm interested in is that Marley's ghost propels Scrooge to redemption so that he can change his fate. So the role of the ghost within the novel is to propel Scrooge's redemption forward. Okay, another word that we're going to be using today is symbolism. So an object, a character or event that stands for itself and a greater idea. It creates a direct link between an object and something deeper and more significant. So examples of this symbolism are the ghosts and Marley's chains. So there's a number of symbolic characters and symbolic ideas in the novel. The ghosts are particularly one of them that we're going to be focused on today. Okay, so you might want to make some key notes here. You don't have to copy everything down, but you know how to make notes. So we're going to be looking at the spirits. So the spirits are a structural device and they propel Scrooge's redemption forward. And the reason he uses them is that they're not bound to time. So it all happens in one night. And Dickens can break away from those normal restrictions, and he uses the motif of the bells and the short time limit for each spirit create tension and a sense of urgency. Okay, so in order to understand the spirits, it's a good idea to look at Dickens's first words in the novella. So that isn't the first 3 words, Marley is dead, to begin with. It's from the preface, and the preface is a small introduction that Dickens writes to introduce his novella to the reader. And this is what he says: I have endeavoured in this ghostly little book to raise the ghost of an idea which shall not put my readers out of humour with themselves, with each other, with the season, or with me. May it haunt their houses pleasantly, and no one wish to lay it. Their faithful friend and servant, C.D. So Charles Dickens. So that's the first thing that he wrote within his novella. And it's interesting because it tells us that the stories, these ideas of ghost stories, were incredibly popular. And I've said that before. There's something that typically happened on Christmas Eve. So in the Victorian era, this sort of story was immensely popular, and this story originally was serialised in a magazine, so lots and lots of people could read it. So Dickens has used kind of this mixture of humour and gothic horror to describe the ghost, because he wants to haunt the houses pleasantly. So it's not supposed to be a scary story. It's one that's supposed to be enjoyed and read, and it's got a happy ending. So basically it's the Victorian version of a Hallmark movie. So it isn't designed to be terrifying. So although there are these terrifying gothic descriptions, the novella has an uplifting ending, and Dickens uses these ghosts to teach moral messages about the importance of charity, goodwill and benevolence. And this is his ghost of an idea. So this is what he wants you to take away from it, that this moral message about charity, goodwill to all men. So he was trying very much to get that idea into the houses of Victorian people and his Victorian readers. So just key bits to take away from that. Ghost stories were very popular in the Victorian era. There's a mixture of humour and gothic horror to describe the ghosts. So although there are terrifying gothic descriptions, the novella has an uplifting ending. And he uses the ghost to teach moral messages about the importance of charity, goodwill and benevolence. And certainly we see that with Marley's ghost in the opening, that Marley said that he's doomed for eternity to traverse the earth tied in these chains because of the way he behaved on earth, and that he's there to teach Scrooge a moral message. And also Dickens was writing this novel to teach his readers this moral message. Okay, so ghost stories were incredibly popular in the Victorian era, and the theme of the supernatural runs throughout the novella. So actually, although there are the three main spirits, the ghosts of Christmas past, the ghosts of Christmas present, the ghosts of future yet to come, there are more ghoulish and ghostly creatures within the novella. So we have Marley's ghost, and he is the first ghost that we see. So he's technically ghost number one. And there are also the phantoms that Scrooge starts to see after he sees Marley, that are wandering around in this state of purgatory, all of the sinners people that he knew, and are wandering the earth, and they're lost because of their avarice and their cruel behaviour in life. So within the first day, we see a number of ghosts before meeting the further three. So then, of course, we've got the three ghosts that we come across, but also the ghost of Christmas presents introduces us to the symbolic characters of ignorance and want, who are the two problems of Victorian society. So we are going to be today focusing on the three main spirits, but there are more ghosts than just those three, and it's important not to forget that they are a motif that runs throughout the entirety of the novella. I hope you're bearing with me, guys. I've had to record this 3 times now, this one slide, because of my nose. So there are three main characters, 3 main ghosts: the ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present, and the ghost of Christmas yet to come. So they each symbolise different things. So the ghost of Christmas past symbolises memories and truth. And here is a quotation that sums up the description of the ghost of Christmas past. But the strangest thing about it was that from the crown of its head there sprung a bright, clear jet of light. So that's the one that looks like the candle, okay, that Scrooge tries to put its cap on later on. So that's the first ghost that Scrooge comes across, well, other than Marley. And then we've got the ghost of Christmas present, and he symbolises generosity and Christmas spirit, and he's the one that makes me laugh because he's the ghost of Christmas present, and he basically is Santa Claus. That's what he looks like in most of the film versions. And his quote there is, "Come in," exclaimed the ghost, "come in and know me better, man." And that's really key there because of the comma, and he addresses Scrooge as man. Okay, not Scrooge, as man. So it's very much a moral lesson to the entirety of society. It's not just for Scrooge, it's for mankind. Okay, so it's really important that it says that you know me better, man, because it represents everybody. And then we've got the ghost of Christmas, the ghost of Christmas yet to come, and he's the one that looks like a phantom. He is death. He symbolises death, and he is very much the ghost that's going to be really key for your mock exam. So he looks like death in itself. And the quote that we've got there for him is it, as in death, was shrouded in a deep black garment which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of it visible, save one outstretched hand. So the Ghost of Christmas, Future Yet to Come, is very much linked to Scrooge's future, and is very much linked to the idea of the Grim Reaper, that if he doesn't complete this journey of redemption, he will die. Okay, so but each one of these characters propel Scrooge towards his redemption, so they move the storyline forward. So what you should see as we progress through the novella, is that each one of these ghosts get Scrooge one step closer to its redemption, to him becoming a good man. Okay, so let's have a little look at the Ghost of Christmas Past. So basically, the Ghost of Christmas Past wants Scrooge to understand how past events have significance in the present. So things that happened in his childhood when he was a young man have affected the way that he is now. So until this moment in the novella, Scrooge has been depicted as a callous miser. Remember that description: cold and hard and sharp as flint, as solitary as an oyster. You know, the blind men's dogs are scared of him and drag the master away. So he's very much this callous and cruel miser. Okay, so Dickens uses the Ghost of Christmas Past to show us that Scrooge is capable of change. So most interestingly, the Ghost of Christmas Past symbolises light, truth, memory, and Scrooge, very much in the first stave, has been set up to be linked to darkness. So the narrator tells us right in at the start of stave 1, it says that darkness is cheap and Scrooge liked it. So the Ghost of Christmas Past is very much going to shine a light upon Scrooge and begin that kind of flicker of hope for him to begin to change. Okay, so interestingly, we've got this really nice juxtaposition between Scrooge's darkness and the light of the Ghost of Christmas Past. So the light is the antithesis to Scrooge's dark, and his form is very difficult to see. Okay, so immediately Dickens draws attention to the fact that he's not just there to show him his memories of the past, but he is there to change him. He's here to help him, and he's there for his welfare, and he's there for, he's here for redemption and his reclamation. So very much the Ghost of Christmas Past wants to save Scrooge. So at the end of stave 1, Marley tells us, "You'll be haunted," resumed the ghost, "by the three spirits." So the first ghost appears. He's a strange figure, like a child, yet not so like a child as like an old man, with a bright clear jet of light. So I always think that the fact that the Ghost of Christmas Past, his form doesn't change, his form doesn't stay the same, is because he represents Scrooge's past, he represents Scrooge's present, Scrooge's future, he represents, everything about Scrooge. So, but he's very much there for his welfare and his reclamation to save his life. So it's really important. He is the antithesis to Scrooge's darkness, which makes it even more interesting that Scrooge tries to put his cap on and wants to extinguish him. Okay, so when we delve into stave 2, into Scrooge's past, that we see Scrooge at school, we see Scrooge with his sister Fan, we see Scrooge as an apprentice at Fezziwigs, and we see the end of his engagement to Belle, and we also see Belle and her family. So we've got this key moment here when Scrooge is at school, and Scrooge has these kind of first emotional reaction to his memory. So the quote that's interesting here is, "The school is not quite deserted," said the ghost. "A solitary child, neglected by his friends, is left there still." Scrooge said he knew it, and he sobbed. So this is a massive turning point in this novel. Dickens uses the adjective solitary and neglected to describe Scrooge at Christmas time when he was at school as a little boy. And this memory provoked an intense reaction straight away, as we can see from the verb sobbed. So perhaps most interesting, though, is Dickens' use of the word solitary. So we've seen this before, so it's repeated from stave 1, and it links to that simile as solitary as an oyster. So perhaps by learning about Scrooge's memories, we get this insight into why Scrooge very much dislikes Christmas as an adult, and perhaps also why he prefers to be on his own, because he's been let down by the people in the past. So it's a massive moment where the reader really begins to understand why Scrooge is the way that Scrooge is. Sorry guys, my laptop's moving forward. Okay, so Interesting word choices there. The adjectives are solitary and neglected, and the verb sob. So if we were to use that in the exam, those are the language features that we'll be talking about. We've got another memory here, Scrooge's memory of his family, and it's a positive Christmas memory, and it's about his sister Fan. So please remember that Fan is Fred's mother, okay? So the quote here, "I've come to bring you home, dear brother," said the child, clapping her tiny hands and bending down to laugh. "To bring you home, home, home." "Home, little Fan," returned the boy. "Yes," said the child, brimful of glee. "Home for good and all, home for ever and ever. Father is so much kinder than he used to be. That home is like heaven. You are quite a woman, little Fan," exclaimed the boy. So Fan is the one that passed away, leaving Fred motherless, and we see that Scrooge kind of neglects his relationship with Fred, probably because he's learnt that people that he loves leave him, so it's easier to be solitary and not to love anyone. So this is another key moment, because it basically shows how Scrooge has been abandoned by his family and by his dad. There's no mention of what's happened to Mum, and obviously Fan dies. So this goes a long way to explain why Scrooge is the way that Scrooge is. So as a reader, we're really beginning to feel quite sorry for this solitary little boy who's been neglected, and his only loving relative. Okay, so Scrooge does have positive memories of his family, and he did have merry times at Christmas. But we also get the hint that him being sent away to school is not a good place, and he was very, very unhappy there. So Fan says that her father spoke to her so gently one night when I was going to bed that I was not afraid to ask him once more if you might come home, and he said yes, you should, and sent me in a coach to bring you. And you're to be a man, said the child, opening her eyes, and you were never to come back here, but first we're to be together all the Christmas long and have the merriest times in the world. So although he's going back home, he's going to start work, he's going to be an apprentice, which we learn later on. So we get this idea that Scrooge's family life is incredibly difficult. So even though he's going home at family, he's going to also be once again abandoned at the end of it. So you really do understand like why he hates Christmas so much. Like he finally gets to go home and he's going to have this lovely merry family time, but at that point he then goes off and he becomes an apprentice, and often apprentices lived where they work, so he probably never returned home fully again. So it does make sense as to why he very much dislikes Christmas. So then from there, the Ghost of Christmas Past takes us on to see Scrooge as an apprentice. He's now a man of work, and he talks very much about his memory of Fezziwig, and that makes him regret his treatment of Bob, who's his own apprentice. And we've got this quote here. "What's the matter?" asked the ghost. "Nothing particular," said Scrooge. "Something, I think," the ghost insisted. "No," said Scrooge, "no. I should just like to be able to say a word or two to my clerk that just now, that's all." So what's really interesting here is that the ghost forces Scrooge to verbalise what he's thinking, and we learn that he's feeling regret, he's changing the way that he's thinking through his memory that the Ghost of Christmas Past shows him. So Scrooge is very much starting to grow as a character, and we can see how the ghost is propelling his story of redemption forward. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a moment to have a look at these questions and to, have a break from me sniffing all over this video. There's some questions here that I want you to answer, so you're going to pause the video and give this a go. So number 1, why does the memory of school leave Scrooge in tears? Number 2, why does Scrooge wish to speak to his clerk? What has he realised? And 3, what does the memory of Fan reveal to us about Scrooge? So pause the video now so you can make a note of the questions. Remember to either copy the question or write in full sentences, so when you come to revise, this is useful. Okay, so here's some of the answers that you may have had. So number 1, Christmas, was a very difficult time because he was left at school alone. Number 2, he regrets his behaviour towards Bob, and he remembers how well he was treated by his old boss Fezziwig. And number 3, it reveals that he's forgotten happy, loving memories of his past, and that he did once enjoy Christmas. Okay, so let's move on from Fezziwig, and now let's have a little look at Scrooge's engagement to Belle and her family, because often people forget about the fact that Scrooge actually sees Belle living with her husband and her children, and basically sees the life that he could have had. It's a kind of, here's what you could have won, Scrooge, if you'd been a decent human being. So it's actually a key moment in the novella. So we've got this moment here with Belle. So Spirit, said Scrooge, show me no more. Conduct me home. Why do you delight to torture me? One shadow more, exclaimed the ghost. No more, cried Scrooge, no more. I don't wish to see it. Show me no more. But the relentless ghost pinioned him in both his arms and forced him to observe what happens next. So here the ghost is trying to show Scrooge that these memories, no matter what, have to be seen, that they're incredibly painful, but he literally pins him down and forces him to watch them. It's a really physical, quite violent description, actually wrestling him into watching this. So here Dickens is very much emphasising the importance of memory, but also truth, that you have to face up to your past, that you have to face up to these memories, and that Scrooge has to recognise and witness these things if he's ever going to have the chance of redemption. I think the most interesting word from this extract is the word, the verb torture. He realises that he's being tormented by what he's seeing, and he's starting to realise very much, what he's done. So remember that one of Dickens's core messages of the novella is the importance of family, of goodwill to others, and benevolence and kindness, and he's very critical of this solitary and isolated life that Scrooge has been living. So it's a very important part of Scrooge's moral education that he sees the life that he could have had. So we've got this quote here. So in the struggle, if that can be called a struggle, in which the ghost, with no visible resistance on its own part, was undisturbed by any effort of its adversary, Scrooge observed that its light was burning high and bright, and dimly connecting that with its influence over him, he seized the extinguisher cap, and by sudden action pressed it down upon its head. So here he sees the ghost of Christmas past, who's forced him to see the life that he could have had as a person in opposition, and he thinks that the light has influence and power over him, and that's why he tries to extinguish him. So he very much realizes in this moment that the light that the ghost has been shining upon his past is influencing him and is changing him, and that's why he reacts so violently and seizes and presses the extinguisher cap down on the candle. He's trying to get rid of this light. So by extinguishing the ghost, he doesn't want it. He doesn't want to see any more of this. He realizes the mistake he's made, but it doesn't mean he wants to accept it. So although this ghost has propelled him towards his redemption, he's at this point still rejecting it. He's not really interested. He's frightened, he's terrified, and that's why he wants to put his light out. So let's have a little look at this quote here. So the spirit dropped beneath it, so that the extinguisher covered its whole form. But though Scrooge pressed it down with all his force, he could not hide the light which streamed from underneath it in unbroken flood upon the ground. So here the whole action, using the extinguisher cap, means that he's trying to get rid of the light. And this, the cap is a reference to how candles were put out. So using a cap to take away the oxygen, so it could be placed over a flame when people didn't want the candles anymore. So that's kind of, the surface level description. He's just trying to put the candle out. However, it really shows how Dickens is showing that Scrooge is trying to physically get rid of it, but he absolutely can't. It's a flood. Yeah, it's something that is flooding his memory, flooding his mind, flooding his emotions, and he can't get rid of it. It's been seen now and it can't be unseen. This light has shone over Scrooge. It's propelling forward his redemption, and he can't escape it now. A circle of events has unfolded that can't be stopped. Okay, so which one do you think is the answer to this question? How does the ghost of Christmas past propel Scrooge's redemption? Choose one. Is it A, shows that he's avarice, B, shows that he's capable of love, C, reveals he is selfish, or D, shows that he is misunderstood? Okay, take 30 seconds and pick one. So so the answer is B. The ghost of Christmas past propels Scrooge's redemption because it shows that he's actually capable of love. Okay, so let's go back to that big question from the start. What is the purpose of the spirits in the novella? Okay, so you're going to have a go now at answering this task. You're going to spend at least 15 minutes writing, and what you can do is you can explain the use of the spirits as a structural device. You can explain the purpose of the Ghost of Christmas Past, and you can explain what the Ghost of Christmas Past reveals about Scrooge's past. So using today's information, I would like you to have a go at this question. What is the purpose of the spirits in the novella? Okay, so I've also got 3 kind of model answers that you can look at the end, but I'm assuming that you can get on with this on your own. So you're going to spend 15 minutes answering this question. What is the purpose of the spirits in the novella? Words that you might want to include are propel, symbolism, redemption, and purpose. So the member of staff who's supervising you today can pause the video here and you can answer that question. However, if you keep going, you can see some ideas that can start you off today. Okay, so here are some sentence stems that you might find useful. Dickens uses the spirits as a structural device too. The purpose of the Ghost of Christmas Past is to. The role of the ghost is vital for Scrooge's redemption because. Okay, spend 15 minutes having a go at that task. Thank you very much, Year 11, and I will see you tomorrow.